always believed that when you marry someone, you marry their family too. I did everything I could to be a good mother-in-law. I was never the type to meddle, never the one to criticize or overstep. I offered help when it was needed, stayed quiet when it wasn't, and bent over backwards to keep the peace. I thought that was how families worked, especially after my husband passed away, and I became the only parent left for my son, Mark, but I was wrong. So wrong. Hold on a moment before we move forward. Let us know where in the world you're watching from. And if you're loving these stories, don't forget to hit subscribe. Tomorrow's episode is going to be absolutely mind-blowing. That's Saturday. Evening. I arrived at Mark and Emily's house thinking it would be a nice family dinner. Nothing fancy. Just something Emily had suggested during a phone call earlier that week. She said, "It's been a while since we've all sat down together. You should come by. Mom's coming too." Her tone sounded casual, warm even. I didn't suspect a thing. I put on my best navy blouse, the one with the little silver buttons, that always made me feel a bit more polished. I even baked an apple pie, Emily's favorite. I pulled up to their driveway, noticing all the cars parked outside. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it wasn't just a family dinner, but something bigger. When I walked in, the house was already filled with people. Some I knew, some I didn't. Emily's mother, Patricia, was there sitting comfortably on the sofa with a glass of wine in hand. Her laughter echoed through the living room. Mark came to greet me, kissed me on the cheek, and took the pie from my hands. "Glad you could make it, Mom," he said with a quick smile before disappearing toward the kitchen. No hug, no real warmth. But I brushed it off. Maybe he was just busy. I made my way into the dining room, and that's when it really hit me. The table was set beautifully. Wine glasses, fancy napkins, silverware perfectly aligned. There were already appetizers laid out, cheese boards, shrimp cocktail, little bowls of olives and nuts. I looked around, trying to figure out where to sit. No one really directed me. Patricia was sitting at the head of the table, laughing with Emily's aunt. Emily was bustling between the kitchen and the table, offering everyone drinks. "Would you like some wine, Mom?" Emily asked, smiling, but not at me. She was looking directly at Patricia. "Of course, honey," Patricia said, stretching her. Glass forward. "Thank you." Emily poured her mother a full glass of red wine, then glanced at me for half a second. No smile, no warmth, and turned away. No offer. Nothing. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. I tried to push the discomfort down. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she just forgot. I walked toward the kitchen, thinking I could help. That's when Emily turned to me, loud, enough for everyone to hear, and said, "Oh, since you're not doing anything, why don't you go ahead and take care of the dishes?" I froze. My face felt hot. My heart started pounding. At first, I thought maybe I heard her wrong. Maybe it was a joke, but no one was laughing. Not in a friendly way, at least. A couple of people chuckled. I caught Patricia smirking behind her wine glass. Mark, my own son, didn't say a word. He just stood there, pretending to scroll through his phone like none of it was happening. I looked at Emily. She was smiling, tight-lipped, but satisfied. Like this had been the plan all along. Like I was the help. Not family. Not someone they cared about. Just someone to wash their dishes. I swallowed hard. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. If I said something, I knew how it would go. I'd be told I was overreacting, that I was being too sensitive, that it was just a joke. And everyone would look at me like I was the problem. So I did the only thing that felt safe in that moment. I nodded slightly, turned around, walked out the front door. I didn't slam it. I didn't make a scene. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just walked to my car, hands shaking, and sat there for a few minutes staring at the steering wheel. The sting wasn't just from what Emily did. It was from Mark. From my own son. From the fact that he stood there, watched it happen, and said, nothing. Didn't defend me, didn't step in. Nothing. On the drive home, my mind wouldn't stop. I replayed it over and over. Her words, the smirk, the silence from everyone else. I thought about every birthday I'd helped plan for their kids, every time I drove across town to babysit when they needed someone, every Sunday dinner I hosted, every loan I gave them when Mark was between jobs and they were struggling to pay the mortgage, every time Emily called me Mom when she needed something. All of it. Forgotten. Erased. Reduced to, why don't you take care of the dishes? By the time I got home, the hurt had shifted. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was something else. Heavier. Sharper. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the pie dish still in the bag. They hadn't even opened it. And in that moment, something inside me broke. Or maybe it didn't break. Maybe it finally snapped into focus. For years, I convinced myself that keeping quiet, being agreeable, not causing waves, that's what kept families together. But I realize now, that only works when everyone cares. When everyone respects you. I pulled out a notepad from the drawer. My hand trembled as I wrote down the first name, my lawyer's. I wasn't sure yet what I was going to do, but I knew one thing. This wasn't over. I barely slept that night. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the clock on the wall, watching. The hours passed like I was waiting for something. But I wasn't even sure what. Maybe a text from Mark. Maybe an apology. Maybe a simple, "Are you okay, Mom?" It never came. I checked my phone more times than I care to admit. Nothing. Not a missed call. Not a message. Not even one of those pointless texts people send when they don't know what else to say. Silence. And that silence said more than any words could have. By morning, the knot in my chest had grown tighter. My hands shook as I made coffee. I kept thinking back to that moment in their dining room. The sound of Emily's voice. The way Patricia leaned back like a queen holding court. And my son, standing there, watching me get humiliated. Like it didn't matter. Like I didn't matter. I opened the kitchen drawer, pulling out an old binder where I kept all my important documents. Bank statements, property deeds, insurance, policies. I wasn't sure why I was doing it. Maybe to distract myself. Maybe because for the first time in years, I realized that no one was looking out for me except me. As I flipped through the papers, something stopped me cold. The deed to Mark and Emily's house. My name, right there, next to Mark's. I stared at it for a long time, like my brain couldn't process what my eyes were reading. It came flooding back. 7 years ago, Mark had called me. Panicked. The bank wouldn't approve their mortgage unless someone with better credit co-signed. Emily was pregnant with their first child. They were desperate. "It's just for the paperwork, Mom," Mark had said. "You won't actually have any responsibility. It's just so we can get approved." I'd agreed without hesitation. Of course I did. That's what family does, right? But I never thought about it again. Not until now. Not until the realization hit me like a freight train. I wasn't just a co-signer. I was a co-owner. Half of that house was legally mine. They never mentioned it. Not once. Not in years. It was like I was expected to forget, to pretend it didn't exist. And standing there in my kitchen, it became crystal clear. That's exactly what they wanted. It explained so much. The way Emily had slowly started changing over the years. The way Patricia became more present in their lives than I ever was allowed to be. How invitations turned into obligations. How I was always expected to help but never truly welcomed. Suddenly, all the little comments Emily made over the years didn't seem so harmless. Maybe next time you could just drop the kids off instead of staying. You know, my mom is just easier to be around. Well, it's different. You're you. I always brushed it off. Always told myself it was just me being sensitive. That's what Mark always said whenever I tried to bring it up. "You overthink everything, Mom." It's not that deep, Mom. But it was. It always had been. I sat back, staring at that piece of paper, feeling something shift inside me. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't being dramatic. I was being pushed out. Slowly, methodically, in ways that were subtle enough to deny, but cruel. Enough to destroy. My phone buzzed. My heart jumped. But it wasn't Mark. It was a message from my friend Linda. Morning. Are we still on for lunch? I stared at the screen for a minute, then typed back, Yeah, I'll be there. When I got to the little cafe downtown, Linda was already there, waving at me from the corner booth. She smiled when she saw me, but that smile faded the second she really looked at me. You okay? Ooh, she asked immediately. I sat down, exhaling slowly. Not really. What happened? For a second, I didn't know where to start. But then it all poured out. The dinner, the wine, the dishes, the silence, everything. And then the deed. The realization that half of that house, the house Emily acted like was her kingdom, was mine. Linda listened without interrupting. Just sat there, her hands folded, her brow furrowed deeper and deeper as I spoke. When I finally stopped, she shook her head. I'm gonna say something, and I don't want you to take it the wrong way. I nodded. Why the hell are you letting them treat you like this? I blinked. What do you mean? She leaned in. Carol, you've spent your entire life bending over backwards for them. For Mark, for Emily, for their kids, for everyone. And what do you get? Humiliation, disrespect, silence. I swallowed. They're my family. Are they? She asked, dead serious. Because last time I checked, family doesn't treat family like garbage. Family doesn't smile while someone they claim to love is being humiliated. Her words hit hard. Not because they were cruel, because they were true. Let me ask you something, Linda continued. If you called Mark right now and told him you needed something, anything, do you really think he'd show up for you? I didn't answer. Yeah, she said, sitting back. That's what I thought. The waitress came to take our order, but I barely noticed. My mind was spinning. I don't know what to do, I admitted finally. You start by realizing you don't owe them anything. Nothing, she said. You've given and given and given, and all they've done is take. I sat there staring down at the table, feeling a mixture of sadness, anger, and something else. Something unfamiliar. Power. I don't even think they remember that the house is half mine, I muttered. Linda laughed bitterly. Of course they don't. Because they never expected you to remember either. She wasn't wrong. I went home after lunch and pulled the deed out again. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and started searching. Real estate. Lawyers. Property rights. What happens when co-owners don't agree? The more I read, the more something started to click into place. For years, I thought the only way to keep my family was to be quiet, to be small, to not rock the boat. But now I started to wonder if maybe that boat needed to be rocked, maybe flipped right over. And as I sat there staring at the screen, my phone lit up. It was Mark. For a split second, I felt a flicker of hope. Then I saw the message. Hey, can you pick up the kids from school tomorrow? Emily's busy. No. How are you? No. About last night. No apology. Nothing. Just another demand. Just another reminder of exactly where I stood. I stared at the message for a long time. And then, for the first time in my entire life, I typed back, I won't be able to. I hit send. My hands shook. My heart raced, and then I sat back. Because something told me. This was only the beginning. I don't know what I expected after sending that message. I won't be able to. But it definitely wasn't silence. Mark didn't reply. No double question marks, no follow-up call. Nothing. Just silence. For someone who was always so quick to ask for favors, It was interesting how fast he could disappear the moment the answer wasn't yes. I spent most of the day pacing my living room. Part of me wondered if maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe I should have softened it. Added, "Sorry, I'm busy." Or, "Can't today, but let me know if you need another time." But no, I stopped myself. That's exactly how they kept me in this box for so long. Always cushioning my words, always making sure they weren't uncomfortable, even when I was drowning in discomfort myself. I sat back down at my kitchen table, pulled out the binder again, and stared at that deed. My name. My son's name. No Emily, no Patricia. Just me and Mark. My fingers tapped against the table. I opened my laptop, again, and kept reading. Property co-ownership laws, rights of co-tenants. The more I read, the more something became clear. They might have forgotten that I legally own half of that house, but the law hadn't. It wasn't just the house either. I started thinking back, really thinking. Over the years, how many times had I bailed them out financially? There was the time their car broke down, and they needed help with the down payment on a new one. Then the temporary loan when Mark got laid off, money that was never paid back. The credit card I opened under my name for emergencies, which they used like it was their own. And every single time, I told myself it was fine. It was family. I was helping my son, helping my grandkids. But looking at it now, it wasn't help. It was expectation. Entitlement. And the worst part? Somewhere along the line, Mark had stopped seeing me as his mother. I was just useful. A phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I grabbed it without thinking, expecting maybe, finally, a response from Mark. It wasn't him. It was Emily. "Mark said you can't get the kids tomorrow. Is everything okay?" "No. Hi. No, sorry about the other night." "Nothing." I stared at the message for a minute. My fingers hovered over the screen, debating how to answer. I typed, "Yes, everything's fine. I just won't be able to." I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. 30 seconds later, the 3 little dots popped up. Typing, then her reply, "Well, that's inconvenient. I guess I'll figure it out." Not a thank you. Not a, "Hope you're okay." Just inconvenient. I locked the phone and set it face down. Later that afternoon, I found myself driving without even thinking about where I was going. By the time I realized it, I was parked in front of Linda's house. She opened the door before I even knocked. "Saw you sitting out there. Get in here." I walked in, sat at her kitchen table, and before I could even open my mouth, she pushed a cup of coffee in front of me. "Well?" she asked. I slid the deed across the table. She stared at it for a second, then blinked. Wait. This is their house. Half of it. Carol. Are you serious?" I nodded. She leaned back, folding her arms. "They really never mentioned this?" "Not once." Linda shook her head. "And they've just, what? Pretended it doesn't exist? Like your name's not right there on the paper?" "Exactly." She tapped her nails against the table. "You do realize what this means, right?" I sighed. "Yeah, I don't know what to do with it." "Carol," she leaned forward, dead serious, "it means you've been holding a lot more power than you ever realized. You've been living like you're at their mercy, when it turns out. They're sitting in a house you partly own." The words hit me harder than I expected. I'd spent so many years feeling small, invisible, pushed aside, and yet, here it was, in black and white. "My name. Have you talked to a lawyer?" Linda asked. "Not yet. I thought about it. I even started searching. You should, not to start a fight, but to know exactly where you stand. No more guessing." I nodded. "You're right. She was. I knew she was." That night, I sat down with my laptop again. This time, I didn't just search randomly. I made a list of local real estate attorneys, read reviews, checked credentials. One name stood out, Deborah Klein, specializes in property disputes, inheritance conflicts, and co-ownership disagreements. 25 years of experience. I dialed the number before I could chicken out. Deborah Klein's office. The receptionist answered. Hi. I'm not sure if I need a consultation or... We can help you figure that out. What's the issue? I took a deep breath. I'm a co-owner on a property. My son lives there with his wife and kids, but I don't. And I'm starting to realize that might be a problem. Okay, she said, her voice calm and professional. Let me take some information. Let's get you scheduled with Deborah for a consultation. 15 minutes later, it was set. Friday. 10 a.m. I hung up and stared at the phone. This was really happening. The next morning, I woke up to a string of texts from Emily. Hey, I just wanted to confirm you're getting the kids Friday. Carol? Hello? We really need you Friday. Can you please respond? Seriously, this isn't cool. I didn't reply. Not yet. A few hours later, my phone rang. It was Mark. I let it ring. Let it go to voicemail. Then another call. Then another. Finally, on the fourth one, I picked up. What's going on? Mark's voice was clipped, frustrated. Emily's been trying to reach you. I've been calling you. I know, I said simply. Silence. Are you okay? There it was, the question that should have come days ago. But even now it felt forced, perfunctory. I'm fine. Okay, well, look, we really need you Friday. Emily has an appointment, and I've got meetings. Mark, I cut him off. I won't be able to. A long pause. You've always been able to. Not this time. He let out a sharp sigh. Look, is this about the other night? You're really going to hold a grudge over a joke? Joke. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tighter. You stood there, Mark. You watched it happen. You didn't say a word. It wasn't that serious, Mom. Not to you, maybe. Another pause. I could almost hear him trying to figure out how to spin it, how to smooth it over without ever actually saying the words, I'm sorry. Look, Emily's stressed. The kids have been driving her crazy. Her mom's been helping a lot lately and, I don't know, things just got tense. I didn't reply. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be, he added. You know how Emily is sometimes. There it was, the same line he'd used for years. You know how Emily is, as if that excused everything, as if her moods, her comments, her jabs were just something I was supposed to accept. I let the silence stretch. Mom? I need to go, I said finally. I've got things to take care of. What things? Things that don't concern you. He went quiet. Completely quiet. I'll talk to you later, Mark. And I hung up. When Friday came, I walked into Deborah Klein's office with my binder under my arm, my hands sweating, my stomach in knots. But when I sat down across from her desk and she flipped through the deed, her first words were simple. Well, Carol, she said, looking up at me, I don't think they have any idea just how much power you actually hold. Deborah sat back in her chair, scanning the deed again as if making absolutely sure she hadn't missed anything. Her glasses slid down the bridge of her nose, and she pushed them back with one finger. This house, she said slowly, tapping. The document is as much yours as it is your son's. Legally speaking, you are 50% owner. That means you have every right to make decisions regarding this property. Hearing her say it out loud was strange, like I'd known it, but only in some vague, abstract way. But this was confirmation. It wasn't just a technicality. It was real. So, what does that mean exactly? I asked, gripping the strap of my purse tightly. What are my options? Well, Deborah folded her hands over the desk. It depends on what you want. If you wanted to sell your share, you could absolutely force that. If you wanted them to buy you out, we could demand an appraisal and negotiate that. Or, if you really wanted, you could file for a partition sale. I blinked. A what? A partition sale, she repeated. When co-owners can't agree on what to do with a property, One party can petition the court to force the sale of the entire property. The court orders the house sold, and the proceeds are split based on ownership. In your case, 50-50. I stared at her. You mean, I could make them sell the house? Yes, she said simply. If that's what you wanted. The thought stunned me. The very idea of it. For years, that house was where birthdays were celebrated, where I babysat my grandkids, where I showed up every time they needed me. It was never my house, not in their eyes. But now I realized, it always partly was. Deborah kept going. Of course, we don't have to jump to that. Sometimes, just sending a formal notice reminding them of your legal ownership is enough to start a serious conversation. People tend to rethink things very quickly when they realize the law isn't on their side. I let the words sink in. She was right. They'd gotten away with treating me like a background character in their lives because they thought I had no say, that I was just there. Someone to pick up the kids, someone to bring a casserole, someone to handle the dishes. But now, that dynamic had shifted. I want to start with that, I said quietly. The formal notice. Deborah nodded. Good choice. I'll draft the letter. We'll send it certified mail. Once they receive it, we'll see how they respond. I nodded, exhaling slowly, for the first time in a long time. I didn't feel powerless. On the drive home, my phone buzzed twice. I ignored it. When I pulled into my driveway, I finally checked. 2 missed calls from Mark. 1 text. Can we talk? This is getting ridiculous. I set the phone down on the passenger seat and stared at the screen for a moment. What was ridiculous was how long it had taken me to see things clearly. By Monday, Deborah's letter was ready. She emailed me a draft before sending it. It was direct. This letter is to formally notify you that Carol is a legal co-owner of the property located at 1147 Briarwood Lane. As such, she has equal rights and responsibilities regarding decisions involving the property. This includes, but is not limited to, financial obligations, occupancy rights, and decisions about the maintenance, sale, or transfer of the property. I read it twice. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't hostile. It was just factual, straightforward, unavoidable. Deborah sent it via certified mail. They'd have to sign for it. No pretending it didn't arrive. No, I didn't see it. I sat at home, waiting, knowing full well that once it landed in their mailbox, everything would change. The confirmation came 2 days later. Signed, delivered, and right on cue. My phone rang. It was Mark. I let it ring twice before answering. Mom, he started, voice already loaded with tension. What is this? I didn't pretend not to know what he meant. It's exactly what it says. I don't even... Why would you do this? Why are you getting lawyers involved? Because, I said calmly, I'm tired of being treated like I don't exist. Like I'm just someone you can call when you need a babysitter. Or someone to cover a bill. Or someone to wash dishes at a dinner table where I'm not even respected. He went quiet. For the first time. Actually, quiet. I didn't think. He fumbled. It wasn't like that, Mom. It was exactly like that. A heavy pause. Emily's really upset. I almost laughed. Of course she is. She thinks you're trying to take the house. I'm not trying anything, Mark. I'm simply reminding you both that I own half of it. Something you've conveniently ignored for years. He sighed, deep and frustrated. Look, let's just calm down. This doesn't have to get messy. It's only messy now because you both made it messy. I just don't get it. Why now? Because I finally realized, I said, voice firm, that no one else is looking out for me. Not you, not Emily, not anyone. So now, I am. Silence again. You know, he said after a moment, his tone sharper now, this isn't just affecting me and Emily. The kids are going to be caught in the middle of this. There it was, the guilt card, the grandkids. I closed my eyes. Don't do that. Do what? Don't weaponize the kids. This has nothing to do with them. You really want them to watch their family fall apart over this? I took a deep breath. Mark, the family didn't fall apart over this letter. It fell apart the moment you stood there. Let Emily humiliate me, and said nothing. I hung up before he could respond. I stood there in my kitchen, phone still in my hand, hands shaking, but not with fear. It was something else now. Determination. The next day, the texts started, first from Emily. This is unbelievable. You should be ashamed. I always knew you were selfish. We've let you be part of our lives out of kindness, but this is disgusting. I didn't reply. Then from Mark, this isn't how we handle things in this family. I stared at it, stunned for a moment. In this family, like I wasn't part of it, like I hadn't been part of it all along. I didn't reply to that either. I called Deborah the next morning. She picked up on the first ring. How are you holding up? Fine, I said honestly. They're angry, but I don't care. Good, she replied. That's normal. Let them sit with it. The next move is yours. I paused. And what would that move be? Well, she said, we can wait to see if they offer to buy out your share, or, if you want, we move forward with a partition action. I sat there quietly, thinking. It wasn't about money. It was about respect. About finally forcing them to acknowledge what they'd pretended wasn't true for years. I swallowed. Let's give them a week. If I don't hear anything, we move forward. Perfect, Deborah said. And Carol, just remember, you're not doing anything wrong. You're standing up for yourself. For the first time in a long time, I believed her. The week passed with a suffocating kind of silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the tense, heavy kind you feel before a storm. No calls from Mark, no texts from Emily. Not a single word from anyone. But I knew them well enough to understand what that silence really was. They were scrambling, talking to whoever they could, figuring out if I was bluffing, trying to convince themselves this wasn't real. It was real. On Friday morning, I woke up, poured myself a cup of coffee, and stared at my phone for a while. Part of me hoped maybe, they'd reach out before it got any further. That Mark would swallow his pride. That Emily would for once realize they'd crossed a line. But nothing came. At 9 a.m., I called Deborah. Let's move forward, I said. There was no hesitation in her voice. I'll file the partition action today. Thank you, I replied, my hands shaking, but not with doubt, not this time. Once they're served, they'll understand just how serious this is, Deborah continued. And if they're smart, they'll come to the table fast. I ended the call, set my phone down, and exhaled. It was happening. The legal process started moving faster than I expected. 3 days later, the sheriff delivered the notice to Mark and Emily's house. A formal court document, notifying them of the partition action. It was no longer a private family matter. Now it was legal, official, on record. I knew the moment they got it. My phone blew up with calls. First Mark, then Emily, then Mark again. I let them all go to voicemail. Then the text started. Mark, Mom, what the hell is this? Emily, you are insane. Mark, are you seriously trying to force us out of our own house? Emily, you've lost your mind. Congratulations. Then the voicemail. Mark's voice was sharp, clipped, panicked. Mom, call me back. This is ridiculous. This is family. You don't do this to family. Call me. Family. Interesting how that word suddenly mattered to him again. I sat with it for a while. Let it sink in. Let it burn a little. Then I called Deborah. What happens next? Well, she said, calm as ever. If they're willing to negotiate, we settle. If not, it goes to court. A judge orders the house to be sold. The profits are split. Simple as that. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Good. It didn't take long. 2 days after the notice was served, Mark showed up at my house. I watched him from the window for a minute before opening the door. His arms were crossed, his jaw was tight. He looked like someone balancing between fake calm and total panic. "Can we talk?" he asked. I stepped aside. "Come in." He walked into the kitchen, didn't sit, just stood there pacing. "Mom, what are you doing?" "What I should have done a long time ago." He shook his head. "You don't really want to sell the house." "I absolutely do." His mouth opened like he was about to argue, but nothing came out. "You've ignored me, disrespected me, treated me like a burden," I continued. "For years, I've shown up for you, for Emily, for the kids. And you've treated me like I was disposable." "That's not true," he snapped. "It's completely true." He rubbed his hands over his face. "Look, okay. The other night, Emily shouldn't have said what she said. I should have stepped in. But you're blowing this way out of proportion." "No," I said, folding my arms. "This isn't about one dinner. This is about years. Years of being good enough to babysit. Good enough to pay for things. Good enough to help. But never good enough to actually be treated with respect." Mark sighed, pacing again. "Look, you're angry. I get it, but forcing us to sell the house? That's extreme. Not my problem. We have kids, Mom. I know. I've raised mine. What you do with yours. That's on you now." He stopped, staring at me like I'd just slapped him. "So what? What do you want? You want money? Fine. We can figure out a buyout. I'm listening." His shoulders dropped slightly. "We'll get the house appraised. We'll pay you your half. Just drop the court thing." I nodded. "That's a start. But you don't get to dictate the terms." "Of course not," he muttered. "Deborah's handling that." "Yes," I confirmed. "And if you want this, to stay out of court, I suggest you call your lawyer today." His mouth opened again, probably to say something snide, but then he thought better of it. "Fine." He walked to the door, paused, looked back. "You know, Emily thinks you've lost it." I stared at him. "No, I finally found it." He left. The next few weeks were tense. Appraisals were done. Lawyers exchanged numbers. Negotiations dragged longer than they should have because Emily, unsurprisingly, tried to argue every single line item. She complained about the appraisal being too high. Argued that I hadn't contributed to the mortgage in recent years, as if co-ownership somehow expired when it became inconvenient for her. Deborah shut it all down. "Your client co-signed the mortgage when the loan was approved. Her name is on the deed. She is legally entitled to half the equity. Period." I couldn't count how many times Deborah had to repeat that. Emily refused to believe it. At one point, Emily even tried to claim that the house's increase in value was because of her decorating choices. Deborah didn't even bother responding to that one. She just forwarded it to me with the subject line, "You can't make this stuff up." In the end, their lawyer realized what Mark and Emily refused to accept. The law wasn't on their side. When the final number came through, Mark called me. "We'll transfer the funds next week," he said, his voice flat. No emotion, no warmth. I nodded. "Good." Then, after a long pause, he said, "You know, this changes everything." "I know. It didn't have to be like this." "You're right," I agreed. "It didn't." Silence. "Goodbye." "Mark, yeah, bye." I hung up, and just like that, it was done. The wire hit my account the following Friday. I stared at the numbers on the screen for a long time. It wasn't just money, it was proof. Proof that for all the years I'd convinced myself I had no power, I did. Proof that for all the times I stayed quiet, I shouldn't have. I sat back, let out a deep breath, and realized something. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't even about the money. It was about freedom. For the first time in years, I was free. The morning after the wire hit my account felt different. Not exciting, not overwhelming, just quiet. I woke up, made my coffee, sat at my kitchen table. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for my phone to buzz with a request, a demand, a guilt trip disguised as a favor. There was nothing. No messages from Mark. No passive-aggressive texts from Emily. Just silence. But this time, the silence wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. I logged into my online banking one more time, double-checking the numbers. Not because I didn't believe it, but because part of me still couldn't believe how long I had let them pretend I had no say in anything. It was all there. The full amount. My half. It wasn't just the house. It was every time I'd been dismissed. Every time they made me feel like I didn't belong. Every time I sat quietly, biting my tongue, paid in full. A week passed before the next thing happened. I was working on organizing some files in my guest room, which I had quietly decided to turn into an office now when the doorbell rang. I didn't even have to check the window. I knew. It was Mark. I opened the door slowly. He stood there, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. "Can I come in?" he asked. I nodded, stepping aside. Sure. He walked in like someone walking into a stranger's house. Awkward, careful, looking at everything except me. Nice. "Set up," he mumbled, glancing at the boxes of files stacked near the desk. I didn't reply. He cleared his throat. I just wanted to talk. About? He shifted his weight. About everything, I guess. I folded my arms. Okay. Silence. Heavy. Uncomfortable. I guess. I didn't realize how bad things had gotten, he finally said, voice low. Or maybe I didn't want to see it. I nodded. You didn't. Mean. The thing with Emily, with the house, with all of it. He sighed. It's like, I don't know, like it snowballed. Mark, I interrupted. You didn't not notice. You just didn't care. Not enough. His head dropped. He didn't argue. He knew it was true. I guess I thought you'd always just be there. I stayed quiet. And, yeah, Emily. He paused. She pushed things sometimes, but I let it happen. I know that. Still, I said nothing. I don't even know how to fix this, he finally muttered. You don't, I said plainly. Because I don't need it fixed. His eyes snapped up to meet mine. What do you mean? I'm done, Mark. I'm done being the person you only remember when you need something. I'm done pretending everything's fine when it's not. I'm done being a convenience. His face tightened. So, what? We just don't talk? That's up to you, I replied. But understand something. If this relationship continues, it's on my terms now. I'm not the babysitter. I'm not the emergency contact. I'm not the free ride when things get tough. I'm your mother. And if you want a relationship with me, it starts with respect. He blinked, like the word itself was foreign. I don't even know how to do that, he admitted quietly. I nodded. That's your problem now. He stood there for a long time, said nothing, then finally, Emily's not happy. I almost laughed. I'm sure she isn't. He rubbed his hands over his face. She says you broke the family. I stared at him. No, Mark. What broke the family was years of disrespect, years of taking, years of you standing by while your wife treated me like I was less than nothing. That's what broke the family. I just stopped pretending it wasn't broken. He swallowed. I don't even know what to say. Then don't. More silence. Then he turned toward the door. I guess I'll go. I nodded. Okay. He opened the door, paused, looked back. I hope maybe. Someday. I cut him off. That's up to you. He nodded. Left. I closed the door, locked it, stood there for a minute. And then, I smiled. Not because it was funny, not because it felt like a victory, but because for the first time, the boundaries were real. Over the next month, the quiet became normal. I turned the guest room into a real office, painted the walls, bought a new desk, got rid of the fold-out couch that had been there for years, just in case the grandkids ever needed to sleep over. There was no more just in case. I canceled the joint credit card that Mark still thought I didn't know he was using. Closed the account. I updated my will. Removed Mark and Emily from it entirely. Instead, I set up a trust for my grandkids. One they can access when they're older, independent of their parents. I made sure it's handled by a third-party trustee, not by Mark, not by Emily. I also booked a trip, something I hadn't done in years, a cruise, 7 days, no phones, no obligations, no guilt. I wasn't running away. I was finally living. I did hear from Mark again. Once, a single text. I hope you're okay. I didn't reply. Because I was okay. Better than okay. For the first time in years, I was free. Free from being the person who never said no. Free from being treated like background noise in my own family. Free from being useful, but never valued. The money wasn't the win. The house wasn't the win. The win was finally realizing that I was allowed to choose myself, and I did.